Howdy, I'm Shane Joyce and this is my review of Hereditary. Hereditary was written and directed by Arri Aster, and in my opinion I really believe that Arri Aster is probably one of the greatest horror directors working today, because I feel like he's bringing the horror genre to a new unconventional place, and he's really setting the bar at a new place, a place where horror hasn't really gone before since the likes of The Shining, in my opinion. And that's what I love about this film, because off the bat I'm just going to say it, Hereditary is one of my all-time favourite horror films already, and I've only seen it the one time. I cannot wait to go back and rewatch this film. It's fantastic. It came out on Netflix the other day. It was my first time seeing it. And like my other favourite horror films, say The Shining and The Babadook, this isn't just about horror. This isn't just about the scares. This is about the characters and their situation and their emotions and how the horror and life is affecting them emotionally. And that adds so much into the scares, in my opinion, and into the dread and into the tension that this film is filled with. I love this film. The story is about the Graham family who suffer a series of losses, and those losses have an awful effect on the characters, and that grief perpetuates our characters into finding out more about this family's cryptic history. And that history, we don't really find too much out about it. It's quite subtle in the way it's told. I feel like a second viewing is needed to get the context and meaning behind the cult and all of the supernatural elements to the film. But that being said, this film is an incredible watch. The acting is phenomenal. Toni Collette plays the mother in this film, and in my opinion gives an Oscar-worthy performance in this film. She is fantastic. She is so believable and raw, and there's one dinner scene where she just goes at it in an argument. She just gives a fantastic performance in this film. I cannot say enough about her performance. It's just, she ties this whole film together and just makes it work. And then Millie Shapiro plays her daughter, and this is the creepiest, most unsettling child performance since The Exorcist. It's just, she is so freaky, and she doesn't get an awful lot of screen time, but the work that she does while she's on screen is just brilliant. She's so freaky in this film. She does an amazing job. I loved her in this film. And then the way in which these characters are filmed is just amazing. The cinematography in this is brilliant. I love the cinematography. The way this film is shot adds so much to the horror. It's fantastic. Very early on in one of the first scenes of the film, we get, it's not quite a jump scare. It's in the corner of the frame, in the shadow. It's very hard to see, but there's a silhouette of a person. And from that moment on, this film hijacks your eyeballs. Gets it into your head so early on that there is always something in the shadows, that there is always something in the corner of the screen, and it's horrific. There are times in this film where I'm like squinting into a corner going, is that something? Is there something there? And then it moves across the screen and it's like, and there's no music cue, there's no audio cue, you just look and it moves. And the way that the shots are composed to force your eye, and there's an awful lot of movement in this film. The camera moves around quite a lot and it's all quite robotic. I don't think there's a single handheld shot in this film. The camera just feels like it's gliding through space. The camera work was amazingly meticulous. It's just brilliant. It adds so much into this film. And then the way those shots are edited goes hand in hand with the composition techniques I was talking about, where it forces you to look into every corner, and it does that by having a really slow pace. This film lingers on shots for so long. You could argue for too long at times, but I think it works because of how well this film immerses you and how well this film forces you to look and analyze the image. And there's one shot where this works brilliantly well, and it's at the same dinner scene that I mentioned a minute ago. At the end, we pull back to a wide and we see them at dinner on the bottom right third of the screen, and they don't take up an awful lot of the image. there's a load of dead space in the image, but there are lamps in the opposite corner, and that's the brightest part of the image. And naturally in art, your eye gets driven to the light. So although they're over here, the light forces your eye over, and you kind of bounce between the bright area and where they're having dinner. And the shot lingers for so long. The editing is so slow paced that it gives you time to look around and hunt for the scares. This film is pretty much a family drama. It's a horrific, unsettling family drama. But the cinematography and the editing create this underlying sense of dread and horror that does not leave you throughout the duration of this film. It's just brilliant. And I really, really appreciate that. This film takes the time to make you care about these characters. It's not just jump scare, jump scare, jump scare. And the character scenes aren't just filler before we get to the next scare. The characters are what this film is about. And then everything else comes together to trick your brain into scaring itself. And of course, as the film progresses, it just gets scarier and scarier. And I only have a couple of critiques for this film. One of those being that there is a character death, I won't say who, but there is a character death in this film that does not land. Like, as an audience member, you can sympathize with them and understand why they're getting so frustrated and why everything is bringing them to a breaking point, but we never see anything through their perspective, so I feel like we never got the ability to put ourselves into their shoes and to feel the story from their perspective. Although we understand it, I just feel like that was one character that I didn't find myself empathizing with, and because of that, their big dramatic death, it didn't hit as hard as it should have. And then my only other critique is that the kind of family mystery that's in here feels a little cliche, in my opinion. This whole, there's something supernatural that we don't know about, but we're uncovering it as we go through the script, and there's photo books that we're looking through, and we're figuring out, okay, this is what happened, and that feels really done. That feels like, okay, how many times do we have to have a character looking through a photo book to understand what's going on? And I think it's so jarring in this film because this film really tries to step away from cliches. Because in most horror films, the music shrills and the music rises and the music makes the jump scares hit. In this film, they let the scares do the work and the audio almost dies. And the moments are allowed to play out with diegetic audio, and I found myself enslaved to the image, looking at the image, trying to find where something is in the frame, and then when you find it and it does something freaky, that's brilliant. And I thought that was so fresh and so unique, and not drawing attention to the scares, like Arri Aster being so confident in knowing that you will find it and giving you the time to find it and then scare you, and not do it with cheap music and cheap audio and avoid that cliche. And he does such a good job at avoiding cliches until this point, and it just feels really cheap in comparison to everything else in this film. And it does disappoint me that that's how he chose to convey the family history, in my opinion. I would have liked something with a little bit more nuance, but that being said, this film still works, and this film is still brilliant. I love Hereditary. It's one of my favourite horror films. And I love how it feels like a character drama at times, and then the horror comes in only to elevate that drama. I really appreciate that. And that it's not just scares for the sake of scares, but it's scares to elevate character. That's fantastic. I wish more horror films did that, but they don't. And I think that's what I really like about this film. And so for me, I think it gets a solid 8 out of 10. It's hard to knock this film outside of those two things that I mentioned. It's quite strong the whole way through. I'm really looking forward to rewatching this film. I definitely think it needs 2 viewings. And it just came out on Netflix the other day, so there's no excuse not to watch it. Go watch this film. It's a brilliant, enjoyable watch. And if it doesn't scare you, the characters and the story is still really strong. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say about this film. So please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you'd like to get notified when I'm making more reviews, which I'll be making a couple every week for the next while, so yeah. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed, and now go watch some movies.